Hey everybody, welcome to X-Oriente, the new voice of Brotherhood. I am one half of your bad influence, Eric Diamond.
I'm the other half of that bad influence, Jason Van Dyke.
And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. I was in New York last week and got to see some brothers out of New York, and that was kind of interesting. But one of the things that I came across while doing my job, of all things, was this story about a place that maybe you love, maybe you hate, maybe you love to hate. But it's Outback Steakhouse. And so there I was, and I'm going to, here, let me just do this. Looking for examples of social campaigns, and I came across this interesting story. Apparently, there are occult connections between the Outback Steakhouse and the Illuminati, and by extension, Freemasonry. Apparently, some enterprising young buck, confused with the Spirit of the Lord and probably with way too much time on their hands, noticed that when you looked at the locations of Outback Steakhouses in a metropolitan area, they reveal a sinister shape familiar to anyone who watches way too much History Channel. This is the metro area of New York, home of my good friend, brother, and supporter of the show, Isaac Moore. But this phenomenon also repeats itself in Indianapolis. Indianapolis, home of Chris Hodap and the Freemasonry for Dummies empire. Mm-hmm. And it's not just there. It shows up in Arizona, in both the Mesa, Arizona area and the Phoenix, Arizona area. And we know prominent Masons out there, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
This is probably Rex. Yeah, it's Rex Hutchins' fault.
Yep, Rex Hutchins. Yep. Mm-hmm. And also in D.C., the D.C. area also has the same sinister pentagram, and Chicago, which is, of course, the birthplace of Masonic podcasting, and also the San Francisco Bay Area. So what the hell is going on here? I mean, surely there has to be an innocent explanation, like perhaps maybe a hub and spoke strategy, or a distribution system based on ubiquity, population density, maybe some other completely sensible business metrics. No, my friends and brothers, this can only be the work of one organization, and that is, of course, the Satanic Illuminati conspiracy. Who else has the resources and the esoteric mad skills to do such a thing to casual dining? And of course, Outback themselves, trying to take advantage of such a boon in social media, they responded with this tweet. So they imposed the picture of the blooming onion on a map and said, plot twist.
That's awesome.
Not so fast, Aussies, because it turns out when you take a look at the blooming onion, it's filled with fried sacred geometry.
Duh.
Yeah. And if you look at, and that's not all, because if you look at Outback's other signature dish, the chocolate thunder from down under, I mean, doesn't that resemble the lighthouse at Alexandria? Source of all ancient wisdom?
Yeah.
No? Maybe look again through the gesture, the secret hand gesture of the Hierophant of the Illuminati. That all-seeing eye just seems to pop right out of that cold vanilla goodness. So I can only come to one conclusion. That talking about this is making me hungry. So this message goes out to all the illuminated brethren. Go now to the Outback and partake of the esoteric gnosis that only 12,000 calories can bestow upon you. And remember, they're watching. They're always watching.
Excellent.
So that is our experimental new segment called Real Fake News. So if you like it, let me know, and we'll do more of them.
That was nice.
Come on, really?
That was nice. There was. I just want to point out for our audience, there was real time put into that those graphical representations. That was not something that someone just off the cuff did. It was thought and purpose behind that presentation. Frankly, fantastic, and what we have come to expect from you, Eric Diamond. Well done.
Although I have to say the pentagrams were not mine. I mean, those are actually coming out of Twitter. But I want to point out something.
And wait, and we all know that pentagrams are the hardest things to draw in Photoshop. So of course they're not yours.
Yeah,
I get it.
Now just take a look at this though.
Uh-huh.
Notice just to the well, actually this is sort of upside down, but if you look up to the upper right, there's an Outback steakhouse right there that has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
So
right, which is hilarious. And also just to the upper left, there was another one that was just almost out of frame.
Yeah,
which is pretty good.
Yeah. So I loved it though. I'm like, yes,
I do too. I think it's amazing.
Outback Steakhouse is the Illuminati. There's your proof.
I'm also semi-ashamed to admit I ate at a Outback Steakhouse yesterday.
Did you really?
In fact,
what did you have?
I literally, I actually did. I had the filet. I also had some sort of a alcoholic punch. So we'd gone with friends. We were out in the burbs in Bowie, Maryland. And over at friend's house, and we decided we were going to go and do that. And we thought, it's easy, it's fast. Let's just go. And I'm in the mood for a cheap, crappy steak. And so we went there, right? And it's edible. And so I'm like, I'm going to get a drink. It's hot. I'm going to get a girl drink. I'm going to get something that's got that's fruity and that's fun. And I don't remember the name of the drink, and I apologize for this. But it was some sort of a flavored vodka, some sort of tropical flavored vodka. The high school girl's friend Malibu, and something else, some other rum, flavored rum in there, and then another vodka, I think. At any rate, I should have really looked at it and been like, that's a lot of booze in that fruity drink. And they put it in front of me, and it tasted just like this just delicious tropical punch. And so I just sucked one down in about 10 seconds and was like, I would like another. And then I got up to go to the bathroom and went, hey, that was a lot of booze in that thing. Wow. I got like a 45-minute drive home.
And I was going to say, when you came to, it was like, eyes wide shut all over again.
Right. That's exactly it. So, God bless Outback Steakhouse. They can make a girl drink drunk pretty quick.
That's fantastic.
And that was pretty fun.
Okay, so I got kind of moving on. I got this in the mail. So this is the Lodge of Research. I think it's called the Villard de Anacourt International Review. It's published by the Grand Lodge Nationale de France. And it's sort of their, research proceedings, but it's incredibly well done. Like the design, it's all color.
The printing is amazing. It's really, but it's the articles that are really, really, they're
really
very,
good.
very high quality.
There was something that I wanted to share with you guys, because I just thought, given that we've been talking, and by the way, just so in case you don't know, Jason and I appeared on the Masonic Roundtable. Last Tuesday night?
That's correct.
Where we talked about it was called Guarding the West Gate, but it really wasn't about that. It was more about, why are there terrible people in Masonry and what can we do about it? I'm not sure we solved that one.
Probably not, but
but it was an interesting conversation. Really, really, really good.
Yeah,
And
good dent in it.
And we thank them for having us, because we had a really good time. But we've been kind of talking about like what is Freemasonry and what should it be, and kind of trying to define it, and we'll talk a little bit more about like how some people are trying to define it. But I came across this, in the introduction of this issue of these research proceedings, and I wanted to share it with you guys because I thought it's really, really good. It's very concise, And I think it has a really good sort of take on what Freemasonry is. It's by Jean-Francois Variot. He's the Assistant Grand Master and Grand Orator of the GLNF. And he writes, after 3 centuries, Freemasonry keeps rememorializing its birth and its astonishing deployment through the centuries and continents of the world, while continuously wondering on what constitutes the Masonic initiation, meditating the rules that it has set, and to perpetuate the spirit in which it has always opened new perspectives. Artwork of transmission, perpetuation of the tradition. Freemasonry has not finished with astonishment to pursue a long path to constitute a unique haven for seekers of meaning and truth. Open to dialogue as in present times, the Grande Loge Nationale Française has chosen for its part through its National Lodge of Research to stand faithful to this tradition. And thus through its research lodges, Freemasonry presently waits to state its reason to be, and its offer to men of goodwill. Offer that consists first and for everyone in the privilege of a lodge. That means the happiness of a found time and space. A closed space, thoroughly preserved, at a time of connectivity pinnacle that deletes space and establishes ubiquity. A time found and figured by a sacred time between midday and midnight, while the permanent sliding and acceleration of the world put a lot of persons in an infertile vertigo. It's within this time and space, preserved in the lodge where new Freemasons are welcomed by their elders for a great enterprise, their personal reconstruction in all freedom of conscience and full fraternity. In the thickness of a found time, a time for oneself, a time emerged from the depth of ages where Masonic research wants to take you. Our Lodge Villard d'Arnacourt welcomes persons that, without Masonry, would never have met: cooks and university teachers, businessmen and humble employees, political personalities and driving school teachers, Catholics and Protestants, Jewish and Muslims. At the same time, when we see gaps being dug, misunderstanding rising, the permanent competition, hatred, fear, Freemasonry offers its members a well-meaning center for union and thinking, in which the young teaches the elder as much as the contrary, because we also have to notice that the elder Freemasons have this for genuine, that they are never tired of learning, and this has been lasting for centuries. To learn what? Masonry has often been compared to a university for adults, an academic upgrading for humanities, a place where one could meet with Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, but also Dante, Rabelais, Rousseau, Voltaire, Lalande, or Benjamin Franklin. Even if a number of sentences from Masonic rituals are borrowed from Epicure, Plato, or Seneca as an example, when they invite us to limit our desires or overcome our passions, and they drive us to beauty, to force, and finally to wisdom, which philosophy is genuinely a friend of? Masonry must not be confounded with the peroration of philosophical speeches. Its ambition is to present to its members some tools and symbols serving a found again inner peace and a way of questioning the present world. Indeed, always renewed meanings are brought by multi-secular texts and symbols to each era as the era of today. In that way, Freemasonry is deeply contemporaneous. For all that, if Freemasonry is open to a new world, it is not a place where one can put the world to rights around a drink. It's a place for work. One of the rare sites where faith, science, and philosophy are convened together to participate in the elevation of the state of consciousness of those who accept the long discipline and the Masonic quest.
So well said, right?
Don't you think?
I mean, yeah. Very, very, very cool.
I love the idea. I love the idea that when he says that it has often been compared to a university for an adults and academic upgrading for humanities. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was great, because that sort of tells you like what the it helps to establish a purpose.
Right. Yeah. And I really like how they say, you're not going to solve it with a drink. its work.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. And excellent use of language, even translated language at that, which is even more impressive.
Yeah.
It was really a cool. And what's really funny is that that's one tiny little piece of that thing. It's amazing. That little magazine, and they encourage. I think was it with a letter that came with it. I can't remember, but they encourage folks, like if you have one of these magazines, send them to us. We want to get together. We want to learn from each other. It was a really cool outreach by GLNF. Really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm going to look into seeing if we can get more of them, or I can provide a link or something like that so that people can get their hands on this, because it really is quality Masonic reading, and it's interesting, given that the GLNF is, recently we've been in the news and it's not all been flattering. I mean, it really goes to show that these guys are serious, and they're doing some really great work. And it deserves our support. So we'll see if I can get them. The only reason I got it, I'm the Grand Rep in my Grand Lodge to France. So they very kindly, they got 2 copies. They put one in their archives and they sent me the other one. And so I never would have probably seen this, had they not sent that. So thank you to the Grand Lodge of Illinois for exposing me to this. And I'm going to make sure that I get like every issue that they publish going forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So today's show though, we had talked earlier in the week, Jason, about wanting to kind of unpack this a little more on the Masonic Roundtable. In their Masonic news section, they talked a little bit about this article that appeared on a blog, The Millennial Freemason, which is run by Nick Johnson, who at one point he was one of the original TMR guys. I think he is no longer a regular on the show. I'm not entirely sure what the deal is. But he writes this blog from time to time, and he wrote this article on July 31st called the Elitist Inside. And on the show, Robert Johnson, who is one of my Illinois brethren up in Waukegan, Illinois, which is north of Chicago, said that he had posted it to the Grand Lodge page and got a pretty, I won't say violent reaction. That's a little bit of an overstatement, but it was pretty hostile. So Jason, what were your impressions? I mean, can you summarize the article or a little bit?
Yeah, so the article talks about how, I'm trying to think of the best way to do it, because he actually makes several points in it. But essentially and this is really oversimplifying it, I think, but he says that we should embrace the idea of elitism in Freemasonry, and how we do that, and how we bring the fraternity back to its glory days when we had the titans of industry and famous people who were successful. And well known for that success. The way that we bring ourselves back to that is to, in essence, make it even more elite than it already is. Some of these ways that he suggests to do that are by raising the dues to a percentage of income model. That requires a significant investment of one's income to support the lodge and to demonstrate one's commitment to Masonry. Another thing that he talks about is that we should raise the age for which you can apply to Masonry, and that young people, it's too difficult for them to take the commitments of Freemasonry seriously because they have too many emerging commitments in their lives that should rightfully come first: family, their jobs, that once they've obtained success, then they could come into Masonry. That's basically what he said. But I encourage everyone to go and read it for themselves on Millennial Freemason. It's a really well-written piece. It's well argued, and it's a thought-provoking piece. That ain't to say I agree with it, which I think Eric and I are united on disagreeing with it. But I like how it starts the conversation. You know, and I'd warn you, you know, he wrote that to provoke emotional response.
Yeah.
You know, it's clear that is a that it's a bit of
Nick's
it's a bit of trolling.
Nick's a bit of a bomb thrower.
He is, but this is a good one, and I think that it's such an awesome way to start the conversation, because it really it makes you, it gives you a visceral reaction, but then the smart Mason will then sit back and go, well, why did I have that visceral reaction? What is it exactly about this that gets me going? And Eric and I both have done that separately. And I think that, I mean, for the most part, though, we agree kind of where it falls short. But I think it's an incredible, it's an incredible argument to have, at least.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of unpack some of this stuff, because there's some, the thing about it, and the reason I thought it would be a good show topic is because there's a lot of stuff in here that I kind of agree with. Like I understand what he's trying to say, and I don't disagree with it. I think his prescription is misguided. And so we'll talk about, like, why we think that.
Right.
But he starts out, he says, at the outset of speculative craft in England, brothers joined for its networking potential. And this is completely true.
Sure.
Like, that was the whole reason to let gentlemen in your stonemasons guild, because they classed the joint up. They lent an air of respectability, and the Masons provided the gentleman with some, esoterica, some cool ritual, and, probably access to cash that they needed, whereas the aristocracy lent, a sense of nobility and a sense of social mobility to these guys.
And the idea of social mobility was brand spanking new.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Because at that time, I mean, it's sort of like once a serf, always a serf kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that sort of provoked the question to me, is like, what is the basis of that social contract today? Right? Like, in a way, and we talked about this in sort of the shows that we did on social relevance, is that, we really have kind of a hard time, I think, rationalizing or justifying, the phrase, why become a Mason, to the point where, like, I talk to a lot of people when I ask that question, like, why should a guy become a Mason? And they get very defensive, and they say, well, if you have to ask that question, I don't really know if I want you as a Mason, which is sort of like, that's kind of, right. To me, that's kind of a cop out, Yeah,
so, it totally is. I agree.
And so he concludes that section of the article by saying that our lodges currently lack the quality of elitism. And I guess the first thing that I kind of want to unpack is this idea of elite and elitism, and what's the difference between elite and, like, to me, the idea that masonry is an elite, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't find anything wrong with that anyway. I mean, I think, we do take upon ourselves obligations that most people don't take. We do hold ourselves to higher standards than the general society. So I think in that regard, we are an elite, or we should be an elite. But I'm not sure about elitism.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I think that the other thing that makes us elite is that we purposefully choose our membership. And so one must apply to us, and then we must accept them. and we accept them unanimously. It's not just, 60% of the guys in this room think you're okay. And so, that's elite as well, right? Because you have to apply, and not all are accepted. So that in itself is elite. Mm-hmm. But again, I agree with you. Is that elitism?
So what would elitism be?
So I think when you add an ism to something like elite, or when you add an ism to it, it's a belief structure, right? It is something that is much deeper than just, they're elitist. If it's an ist, they're kind of elite. They do these things. They exhibit the they exhibit the symptoms, I guess, of being elite. But mm-hmm. when you put an ism on the end of it, it's a much deeper connection, right? It shows it shows down to core values. It says that that you believe in separation from the mass, right? Mm-hmm. Because elite is small, it's chosen. And if it's elitism, it means that you believe in the small chosen as a core belief of yours. Isms are beliefs. So mm-hmm. to make it go big in circles.
There's a kind of an interesting parallel in Judaism. One of the nicknames of the Jewish people are the chosen people. Mm-hmm. And that's always been a problem for Jews because, it clearly says in the Bible that, Israel is God's chosen, right? God sure. is saying, I choose you, right? But for years, people kind of had this idea that somehow Jews thought themselves better than other people. In fact, even some parts of Judaism have that, they've sort of ingrained that. They've sort of accepted that. And there are prayers that many of us don't say, but super ultra religious do, where they say, thank you, God, for not making me a Gentile, which I think is a little bit,
right.
But be that as it may, the answer that a friend of mine who's a rabbi gave to me, which I thought was really interesting, he said, you have to ask yourself, chosen for what? And so if your idea of chosen, which is a stand-in for the word elite, right? If your idea of chosen is that you're somehow better than everybody else, that's a problem in my book, right?
Agreed.
But if what you're chosen to do is to take on an extra obligation, right? That is a sort of elitism that I can get behind, right?
Okay.
Right. If you think about you look at it like an elite unit, like the Navy SEALs or the Army Rangers or something like that, right?
Sure.
What is it that sets them apart? Well, they have to do more. They're held to a higher standard. They have to, they're expected to give more. They're expected to does that mean that they're better? Maybe they're better at certain things, but in terms of their character, in terms of their morality, in terms of, as a person, probably not.
Mm-hmm. And I think Nick in his article, I think he makes the definition of what he's thinking of pretty clear, actually. Let me read the part where I think he kind of lays his cards out on the table. He mm-hmm. says, Freemasonry is devalued so the common man can take part, and this is to our detriment. Wow. Yeah. We don't have doctors, lawyers, and businessmen joining. And because they are not joining today, we have to pull out old lists of dead brothers dead brothers of quality to appease our sense of greatness. If we want to rub shoulders with the elite, we must be elite. We cannot be pedestrian. We cannot be common. We cannot keep dues and expectations so low as to not scare away the curious passerby.
Yeah. Whoa. So
lays it right out there.
Yeah. So
clear as day.
So let me take my semantic scalpel here, and
There you go.
I do agree that when he says we have to pull out old lists of dead brothers of quality to appease our sense of greatness, I think we do rely way too much on the past.
Agreed.
Right. So when someone says, why become a Mason? Well, Harry Truman was a Mason and George Washington was a Mason, and Duke Ellington was a Mason, like that's not a reason to do something. That's sort of like, wow, we're in a really nice neighborhood. So I agree with him in that, but I don't think, I think that what is a common man? I think that that's sort of the problem. I think when he says common man, what he's saying is the uneducated, the, maybe someone who has less education, maybe someone who's less affluent, who hasn't had advantages in life. And I categorically reject that. And in fact, one of the movies that I actually really wanted to put on the list, but I couldn't find any good clips of, is a movie that really, it was very, formative for me, as a young man, but it was the Razor's Edge. Have you ever seen that movie?
Mm-hmm.
With Bill Murray? It's an interesting story, just how that movie got made. Because Bill Murray, to make that, this is a passion project for Bill Murray. It was a kind of a flop at the box office, but it was a really great movie. But in order to make the movie, to get funding for the movie, he had to agree to be in Ghostbusters. And so that was sort of how that whole thing happened. He gave them Ghostbusters and got the Razor's Edge. But there's a great scene in the Razor's Edge, sort of toward the beginning of the movie, and it's about this guy who, these two guys from Lake Forest, Illinois, which is a suburb, very affluent suburb north of Chicago, who right before during World War I, they raised, they're graduating from school, they raise money to buy an ambulance, and they're going to go take it over to France and be ambulance drivers. And when they get to France, the war just, it just shatters them. And they just see what the reality of it is. And, they realize that they're not in Lake Forest anymore. And so afterward, the rest of the story is about this guy who's going on this quest for meaning in his life. And one of the things he does is he kind of rejects his affluent upbringing, and he decides to go work in a coal mine in the north of England. And when he's in the coal mine, he meets this guy who invites him over to his house for tea, and they're sitting there, and they start to have this conversation, and the coal miner says, well, have you read the Upanishads? And he says, what? He says, the Upanishads, the seminal Vedic literature of ancient India.
That's right. Yeah.
No. Well, he says, and in this northern accent, well, you've got to read the Upanishads, And he goes, oh, wow. Can I borrow your copy? And he says, absolutely not. You're a coal miner. They have dirty hands, and so, right. And so that's kind of that always, I always struck that as just a beautiful scene. Here's this guy as a coal miner, he's got this rough hands, rough language, everything like that. Yeah. And there he is, gets home from the coal mine.
Right.
Hands are still filthy dirty, and he's reading the Upanishads, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
Is that guy elite or not? You know what I mean? In my book, he's a elite.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And and that's the thing is that I think that paragraph was again written very purposefully.
Yeah.
He's not mincing words. And I think that what he's really saying, I think that he kind of punches you in the face in the beginning, but the last sentence, we cannot keep dues and expectations so low as to not scare away the curious passerby, is what he really means there. And when he inflames you and he gets you going, that last sentence is what he really means, which is, people should think twice about joining Freemasonry, because what we're doing is serious. And it's profound. And so one does not make a serious or profound choice quickly, easily, or with little thought. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you get the guy who shows up to your lodge, who wants to join, and just says, why do you want to join Freemasonry? I don't know. I saw it. I'm looking for something to do. I don't know. And they haven't really thought about it at all. And I think what's interesting is that, Eric, you talked about this actually on TMR, which is that, that's part of a good investigative process for your lodge. is that you ask, why do you want to join? Why do you want to join this lodge? Why do you want to be a Freemason? And you always tell them, you don't have to answer that now. But I want you to really think about it. And I want you to think about, obviously you don't know anything about Freemasonry. So you can't tell me specifically like, well, in the third degree, there's this part that I think is cool. Why do you want this? What is it going to do for you? And why do you want to hang out with us? Mm-hmm. What do you hope to get from us? And I think it's a really, really good question, and one that if one does think about it and can prove, hey, I'm not just a passerby, I'm not the curious passerby, then you've got it. Now, what's funny about that is that he kind of destroys everything else that he says in the beginning of it, which is, that the curious passerby, obviously is everybody who's not a doctor, a lawyer, or a businessman. No. And again, and I really disagree with that.
Yeah. Well, I have issues with it too, because he ties dues and expectations, and that's where he loses me.
Me too. Just because you pay a bunch of money for something, it doesn't mean it's any good.
That's right.
First of all, the Wu-Tang Clan made one album that Martin Shkreli bought, actually, for $8 million. There's only one of them, but Wu-Tang Clan's great. I really like them, but is one album worth $8 million? Absolutely not. That's just stupid.
It's a really good album, though. It's really good.
I'm sure it's great.
It's really awesome.
Not $8 million. Not $8 million. Never. Ever.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's another issue here. That is sort of the idea of membership. And I think one of the problems that we have as a fraternity is that nothing happens outside of membership. So because like in a lot of places, like we're in Illinois, we're now empowered to have meetings on any degree we want. And so typically, unless there's a reason not to, we typically open on the first degree so that we can have all of our Masons participating. They can't vote, but they can attend, right?
Sure. And
in a lot of places that's not true, right? So what happens is if I need a guy in the shrine or in the Scottish Rite, right? It's in my interest to get those guys in and seated as quickly as possible so that I can get them into other parts of Freemasonry. And I think that is it's a missed opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so like, I was thinking about this in terms of the mafia of all things, right? I was thinking about this so
another membership organization, initiation rituals. Yeah,
initiation ritual. But you're an associate for a long time, and then when they know they can trust you and they know that you're the right material, then they make you a member, a full member, right? And so what that means is, this is a terrible analogy. I'm like going to a very bad place here, guys. But it's a terrible analogy. But what's interesting about it is that there are activities that support people who are kind of hangers on, and this is true of motorcycle clubs too, right? They have the same thing
absolutely.
Where they have people who are hangers on, and then once they and the activities are open, they're public activities. Right. I mean, somewhat public, right? Like you can show up if you're the right kind of person, you show up at a biker bar. If you don't get the crap beat out of you, because nobody likes you, then you're probably invited back, and you'll keep getting invited back until you get offered a membership opportunity.
But once again, you've delved into a very strange metaphor, because they don't let you start running meth for them until you're a full member.
That's right. Well, and I think you have to be in Memphis, Mizraim to actually start running meth, which is why they don't let you do Memphis, Mizraim, right? Because they don't want a bunch of meth heads in Freemasonry.
Fair, fair and valid point.
But what I guess my point is that if we had a fraternity where we had the opportunity to engage men with valuable programming and activities that did not require them to be members, but simply showed them what we are about. And they do this in France. So one of the things that the Grand Orient does is they hold public lectures and discussions and debates and stuff like that with their members that are open to the public, because they're not really talking about anything Masonic specifically. They're talking about philosophy. I mean, what that guy Jean-François wrote in his introduction. You know, it's about Voltaire. It's about, you know, Rousseau. It's about Ben Franklin. It's about, you know, it's about the ideas that are behind this thing. And if we were able to kind of start to bring more of that out into the public sphere, maybe that would take a little bit of the pressure off of, you know, like we could be more selective, because we would have a pool of guys that were, you know, maybe not a huge pool of guys, but a consistent pool of guys like wanting to get in.
Yeah. Well, and you know, here's the thing, right? Is that, you know, number one, not everybody is a leader. Mm-hmm. You know, that's just a fact of life.
And they shouldn't be.
Right? That's exactly right. And so I think that this does not give, it doesn't give credence to that reality. You know, not everybody's a leader. And in fact, most are followers. Mm-hmm. And so when he says things that like, he says here, and no, I don't want blue collar workers booted or barred from Freemasonry. But if you are too busy thinking about paying bills or raising small children or looking to be promoted, then any time outside of those life goals will allow you, future Freemason, to falter, and those goals will go unmet. Again, we don't want you until you are ready. Who are you to tell me when I'm ready?
I know. And that's my biggest problem with this, because actually what you want is exactly the opposite.
That's exactly right.
You want guys,
right?
Who? So this is kind of
who have potential that's unfulfilled.
Exactly. You want to pick the guys that
mm-hmm.
you look at and go, that guy is capable of being a successful Mason. That's the guy I'm gonna fawn over and love bomb and get him. You know, make sure that he gets a petition in his hand.
And by saying that guy is going to be a successful Mason, what you're saying hand in hand with that is that guy will be a successful man.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah. You know, and the thing is that, yeah. And to say, you know, we don't want to build you. It's just,
yeah.
That's the part
that's what
really
we do. That's what we do.
Me about this. Yeah. That's what we do, you know?
Yeah.
You know, Masonry, the symbolism of Masonry, of operative Masonry, in Freemasonry, doesn't say, well, we found this beautiful cathedral and we kept it up.
That's right.
It says we took a rough stone and we perfected it, and we made it square and level on all edges. Yeah. You know. So to say to someone, we don't want you until you're perfect already, is it's just absolutely antithetical to what we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Years ago I read a book on Skull and Bones, you know, the secret society at Yale, and they were talking about, like, you know, what, you know, sort of like an expose of like what, you know, what it's really like inside Skull and Bones sure. and things like that. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, it's been male and white, and, you know, and of late, it's not.
Which reflected Yale perfectly.
Yeah, right. And what the author of this book said was that what they do when they're selecting people, I think it's called tapping them. That you get tapped, yes. Right?
Tapped. Mm-hmm.
When they tap people, what they're looking for are people who in 20, 30 years are likely to be leaders and successful.
That's correct.
And you can kind of tell that. I mean, you can kind of like, you can look at a person and go, okay, this person is not just
unique and special.
Well, and here's the thing, like, I mean, with few exceptions, everybody who goes to Yale is smart. You know, they don't let really dumb people. I mean, I'm sure like there are a few really stinking rich people that they let in that are kind of dumb, right? That does happen, but those people are likely to be successful too, right?
That's exactly. I was just going to say that.
So,
that, like,
there's value in that.
Factors.
There's some value in that. I mean, I'm sure like there have been more than one Masonic building that was just built on some of Daddy's trust fund money. I'm sure, you know what I mean? Like, don't,
Exactly.
let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. But
Totally.
but what they do is that they were likely to look at people who they thought would be successful in life, and those are the people that they tapped. And that's the kind of elitism that I look for. And it's funny, like I
can get behind that.
I've always, like, it's funny when I was invited to join the Allied Masonic degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I was told that what they look for is someone who is capable of doing serious Masonic scholarship. And to be tapped for that, it's an invitational body. To be tapped for that really made me, and continues to make me, proud, right? Mm-hmm. And ever since then, I've been the jerk in my council who, every time they bring up a candidate's name and they say, they'll say something like, well, he's been a really active York Rite Mason. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, but no. Is he capable of doing serious Masonic research? Not even has he done serious Masonic research. Is he capable of it? If he's capable of it, I want him at our table. If he's not capable of it, there's other places in Masonry to hang your hat, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
So, that's kind of like, I think that the response to that aspect of what Nick is saying. The other thing that bothered me is his statement in the next paragraph where he says, Freemasonry does not want or need you until you have established yourself in your career and in your family.
Right. I couldn't disagree with that anymore.
Yeah. Why? I'm not challenging you on it. I agree with you, but I just wonder why you think
honestly, because I think we just went over it. I think we just talked about that. Mm-hmm. Is that what we want? Is we want potential. Mm-hmm. If you're already established, what the hell is Freemasonry going to do for you?
Yeah, that's true.
If you're already great, why would you join an organization at all? You're already great. Yeah. You need nothing.
Or you think you are.
Well, right. And there's a great point too. Or you think you're complete. And if I think I'm complete and I come into Freemasonry, I am going to be a terrible Mason because I'm not working on myself. And by extension, I'm not working with my brethren. It's ridiculous. I made the quip, and I, when we talked about this on TMR, what he's looking for in his thing here is, he wants, someone who is, really successful in their business endeavors, in their professional lives, and someone who thinks that they've got something to say, and that they're already great and they're perfect there, and that they're very wealthy. Mm-hmm. And I said, there's already an exclusive elite club for that, and it's called the Senate. Go join that. Freemasonry is different. So I mean, it's it's really interesting. Because I think that then he says things that are just 100% perfect. Don't call networking a mercenary motive. Masonry is the OG social network. Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
totally.
And I think that it's funny that I think the reason that they've backed off of that, because I've always said, why don't we have a Masonic job board?
We do. Actually, in DC, we do.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Well, what I was told,
but we keep but it's not official. It's not by the Grand Lodge. It's run by members outside.
So here's the problem. The problem is that there's a you could say, well, you're discriminating, right? Because you don't let women in. You're giving business advantages to your all male, members that you're not giving to everybody. And my response was, give them to everybody. Like, why should you?
What stops anyone from saying, like, hey, my wife is looking for a job?
Yeah.
My sister's looking for a job.
Right.
Nothing.
Look.
In fact, all of the typesetting and layout, all of the publishing that we do for the Grand Lodge, for the most part, is done by a brother's sister. And we came across her because he was like, listen, my sister's looking for design work, graphic design work. And we said, well, can she do this stuff? And he said, yeah. And we said, all right, well, we'll give her a try. And she's freaking amazing at it. And so, that's great. So there's right there, and that social networking is not closed to just men.
And I think you could be discriminating without being discriminatory. So for example, if you look at, what is it? What's that insurance company? No. You have to be either active or retired military or
Farmers. Oh, Geico?
No. It used to be Geico. It starts with an A. Oh, well, I was going to drive you crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I wanted to say AARP, but it's not AARP.
No, it's not. It's I can't think of it. And there's no one on Facebook who's coming to bail us out either.
Yeah. Come on, Facebook.
Way to go, Facebook.
USAA.
There you go.
Yeah. So
no thanks to you, Facebook.
Yeah, thanks, Google. Google saves us again.
Right.
Yeah, USAA, like you have to be either active, honorably discharged, retired, or the family of one of the members, right? And they don't discriminate against male, female, or anything like that, which is great. That's what you want, right? So you just say, look, this job board is for anybody who is
there you go.
Family of a Mason, friends of a Mason, really, everybody, like that's pretty much everybody when you get down to it, right? And if you're not friends or family of a Mason and you want to get those benefits, go make friends with a Mason. Right?
There you go. Right. That's exactly right.
Right. So so I would agree with that part of it. I think that by crushing that, we've crushed a lot of the social purpose and the mobility that Freemason has always provided men. So then he gets to his prescription. And here's where I really had problems. One, he says, increase the minimum age to petition. To what?
40?
What is this? The Kamala?
45? No, right. But that's exactly what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
Where is it? What is the minimum age that, that you hit those, that you're not thinking about paying bills. You're not raising small children. You're not thinking about being promoted. What's that age? What's the minimum?
What? I'll tell you something. There was a guy who petitioned the lodge. He was still in high school when he petitioned, and people were, I remember at the time, people were concerned. They weren't, nobody was ready to throw a cube, right? But they were concerned. They were just like, he's probably too young. And I said, I was on the investigation committee. I said, let me talk to the guy. And I talked to the guy and I thought, this guy is amazing, right? He's here for all the right reasons. He's got the right kind of hunger, right? That was, man, I want to say 10 years ago, going on 10 years ago. He is one of the best Masons we have. And he's an actor. He's an amazing guy. He is there for his brother. I mean, he's like everything you'd want a Mason to be. And yes, he's a struggling actor. So he is constantly worried about paying bills. He's constantly trying to make his way in the world. He's everything that, like under Nick's prescription, we never would have had that kind of Mason. And I'm sure, here's the thing, it's a little unfair just to kind of say, well, I know this one guy, it's like, it's very anecdotal, but I think that raising the minimum age is not going to really accomplish anything. And then he says, number 2 is increase dues to a percentage related to disposable income, which is just off the table in almost every Grand Lodge I can think of, because now you're not on the level anymore.
That's correct. That's exactly right. Exactly right.
What you can do, and I think I mentioned this on TMR, right? Keep dues low, right? But encourage gifting. There's nothing that says you can't have an appeal or a building fund or a charity fund and just milk your wealthier members for everything that they have, to contribute to the lodge and create a culture of expectation where people give back. And I've talked about Williamsburg Lodge a lot. They're one of the lodges in Virginia that that create this sense of stakeholderness.
Sure.
And it inspired me to I periodically will make gifts to the lodge of, I see a need that they have. And, rather than just sort of like bring it up in a meeting and say, oh, let's get a new we need a new Bible. Our Bible's falling apart, or we need new candlesticks or a snuffer or whatever. Just go buy it. Just go to, if you have the means to do it and you're able to do it, go do it. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says, ultimately you'll want dues to price out all but those who have their acts together. And I would say that if you have your act together that much, you don't need a brotherhood.
Bingo.
Right. His number 4, expect more from our members. Each person should be buddied with another, and both should ask how the other brother is doing financially or occupationally. For me, I think that this needs to be done by everybody. I don't think I don't think buddying up is gonna.
Right. This is a mentorship argument, and if your lodge isn't doing mentorship in some way, whether that's whether that's formal or informal, your members aren't going to go places. I mean, that number four is a good one.
Yeah, I think too, if you're doing it right and you're not like if your lodge is lucky enough to be able to do your own work, and you're not getting courtesy degrees from other lodges, and you're not doing the 1-day classes to get all of your members, naturally what happens is when a guy goes through a class of Masons, right, and it's sort of around a year, they're a little bit closer than other guys who come in subsequently. Right.
Correct.
So the guys that I kind of went through with and were there when I was getting my degrees, I'm very, very close to, and not so much some of the newer guys, but I mean, I still like them. They're still great guys, and I like spending time with them. It's just that I don't know as much about them because I haven't spent as much time that I've spent with these guys, working on catechisms and stuff like that. So that kind of naturally happens, I think, if you're doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, encourage Masons to think of leaving a legacy to the lodge. Freemasonry is a family, but even more so, it requires the brothers to think of their future. You can't leave a legacy if you don't have one. I have no problem with that.
We talked about that, yes, and I agree with that. Okay,
And then he says, we must expect greatness from our future members, which, yeah, but what does that mean?
But by his prescription, we should expect greatness from our petitioning members.
Yeah.
Meh.
No, I think we'd be better off picking people that we think are going to be successful,
and whom we can help, deliver on that promise,
and have an influence on. Absolutely. And so the last thing, I mean, that's kind of where the article ends, and I applaud Nick for writing it. I applaud him for.
Me too. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
think of how much conversation has come out of this article.
I know, and
good for you.
And I'm sure he's catching a lot of crap for it too, which
good. Yeah. Which but that's all honest crap. The thing is that like. One of the core tenets that I think that we get away from is the idea of honest debate, and that that's something that Freemasonry is founded on. It's an Enlightenment ideal of honest, intelligent debate. And I don't think, in fact, I think very, very highly of Nick. I think Nick is a ridiculously smart guy, and I really genuinely like him. I really disagree with this, and I kind of hate some of his suppositions that he makes in here. But the thing is that but I love being able, and Nick would sit with us today, and defend himself, and we would have no problem with that, I mean, and that's kind of the cool thing about this. And I think more people need to write stuff like this. Go out, light some passion under some people, take a stand, believe in something that might not be popular, and then grow from it. And that's what I hope he's doing with this, is that, that he's taking this in, and he's taking, things that people have said to him, and he's measuring himself by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
That's the right way to do this.
And I think with that, we're just past the hour mark. I think that's probably a pretty good place for us to stop. Mm-hmm. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you like what you hear on X-Oriente and you'd like to support the show, we would love your help and your input at our Patreon page. It's www.patreon.com/X-Oriente. There's links in the show notes on the blog at xoriente.com. You can drop us a line at xoriente@gmail.com. But we really do need your help. The bandwidth that we need to continue to bring video to you, it does cost. It's a labor of love for us. We're not overly monetizing this or trying to, we're not getting rich off of this, but if you can help us out, just for $5 a month, you can become one of our executive producers. You get a lovely lapel pin, a thank you card. You'll get a credit.
Cost of a cup of coffee.
It's a cup of coffee. It's 1 cup of coffee a month, and not even like that fancy cold brew nitro coffee.
No,
just like a latte, like a crappy old latte,
like a grande latte.
Grande latte.
Right. Not even a venti.
I like to think you're worth a grande latte.
You're damn right. I like to think so too.
So if you can, consider becoming an executive producer. Again, that's www.patreon.com/X-Oriente. Also, if you were trying to get to our video last week on Masonic movies and were having a hard time or couldn't find it, it'll be back eventually. I think what happened was because we were playing movie clips in it, which falls under the fair use clause of the copyright law, because we were commenting for purposes of criticism or education. That's considered fair use, but the algorithm doesn't really discriminate. So basically what they do is they take it down first, and then they make you justify yourself. So we've filed the necessary documents. We've already been cleared by the major movie studios. I think Universal cleared us, MGM cleared us, a couple other ones cleared us, and so now we're just waiting for the rest of them. In the meantime, I believe it is still up. If it's not, please just drop us a line, let us know. And I think this will all be behind us, I think, as of September 7th. So you can also you can always get the audio wherever you get podcasts. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on whatever your favorite podcatcher is. We should be there. Just look up X-Oriente, ORIENTE. And that's it. Do you have anything else to add, Jason?
No. No. Shameless self-promotion, though. Check out the blog I run for the Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. It's really starting to get pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. You can get that at dcgrandlodge.org. And it's called The Voice blog, named after our long-running magazine from District of Columbia, The Voice of Freemasonry. But please go to the blog, read a lot of really fun stories, a lot of really cool stuff from Masons in the District of Columbia and all over. And it's fun. It's a good time. It's shaping up really well. I've been doing it for about a month now, and I'm really pleased with the results.
Cool. So we've got a lot of great shows lined up. Next week, we're going to try to have a guy who has written a really amazing Masonic app, and which is either promising or threatening, depending on your point of view, to really kind of change the way we think about technology and Freemasonry. So we're going to do a show next week on technology and Freemasonry.
Cool.
Okay. Well, until then, take care, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Good night, everybody.